rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Guys, you are going to love my guest coming up, Bridget Ziegler. She is the vice president of the Leadership Institute. We'll get into that. What she's working to do is to take back America's schools, one school board seat at a time. The schools are something, K through 12 education is something conservatives must get involved in if we are going to take back our nation from the woke mob. Bridget is training people on how to do that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about DeSantis and how important all of this stuff is. Before we get to my guest, I do want to share with you a couple of sponsors. MyPillow.com, Mike Lindell has built a fabulous company there. Again, MyPillow.com. He's out with a new pillow, MyPillow 2.0. And actually, there's an exclusive offer for my listeners, buy one, get one free. So the new MyPillow 2.0 comes with the same a patented adjusted feel as the original MyPillow, but now it has this temperature regulating thread. So now the pillow is softer, it's smoother, and it's even cooler. The pillow still comes with a 10-year warranty. Actually, all of Mike's products do. 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. You cannot beat that with a bat. Plus, you get the free MyPillow. All you have to do is go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener square at the top of the page, enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, or give them a call at 800-858-0263. And guys, let me also tell you about Birch Gold Group. Please, please, please make sure you have your money tied up in tangible assets that you can see, that you can feel, that you can smell. Birch Gold Group. Former President Trump recently issued a warning from Mar-a-Lago. Here's what he had to say. Our currency is crashing and will soon no longer be the world standard, which will be our greatest defeat, frankly, in 200 years. Some experts believe there are serious threats to the future value of the U.S. dollar because of inflation, deficit spending, and our increasing national debt, now at $31 trillion, by the way. One asset that has withstood famine, wars, and economic disaster dating back to biblical times is gold, and you can own it in a tax shelter retirement account with the help of Birch Gold. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or your 401k, maybe from a previous employer even, into an IRA that's in gold. And the best part is you don't have to pay a penny out of your own pocket. Text my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, to 989898 to claim your free info kit on gold. Think about this. In March of this year, when the banks faltered, the stock market faltered, and gold surged. Birch Gold can help you find out how to protect your savings with gold. Birch Gold has an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. Text my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, to 989898. Again, text Carl to 989898. Birch Gold Group. Guys, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, The Carl Jackson Show. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Rumble, The Carl Jackson Show. Rate, review, and subscribe to those pages, please. And without any further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest, Bridget Ziegler of the Leadership Institute. All right, guys. So I told you that I'm going to have a fabulous guest on today. This is a guest that I want you to get to know, a guest that I want you to support. I'm speaking of Bridget Ziegler. She is the vice president of the school board leadership programs at the Leadership Institute. When I was filling in for Mike Gallagher, she was a guest that was on with me that day, and I was so fascinated by her. I contacted Mike's producer and I said, I have got to get this chick on my podcast. Excuse me for using the word chick, Bridget. But,
it's totally okay.
All right. So anyway, so I was like, I've got to get her on. She is fascinating and she is doing great work. So without any further ado, I want to introduce you to Bridget Ziegler. Bridget, welcome.
Thanks, Carl. That was a very sweet and kind introduction, but it's an honor and I'm really excited to share what we're doing. I'm very passionate about it. So any opportunity I have to scream to the rooftops about how important this piece is about education and getting involved, I will take it up. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Okay, so now let's go through this. You currently serve on the Sarasota County School Board, and you chair that board. You've got a lot of history. You left behind a career that you were involved in for 15 years. You're a mother of 3 young children, which is absolutely fascinating to me as well. Why did you decide to do that?
Yeah. So, and full disclosure, my littles, my 2 younger, are in this area, my office area somewhere. So if they make a cameo, that's just a heads up. It happens sometimes. But so I worked in corporate risk consulting for about 15 years. I was always involved in child advocacy issues. They're very passionate to me. Okay. Through volunteer work through high school and even through college, and then in my professional world. But and I come from a long line of educators on one side of my family. I'm not an educator, but once I had my first baby, Reagan, my husband, she was 8 months old, and my husband's very active in politics. I think one of our first dates was a REC meeting. No joke.
No way.
Yes. So, but that wasn't the world I came from. But I was always involved, like community, and paid attention. Cool. But when there was a vacancy on our 5-member board in Sarasota, and I'll never forget, he came in one day and he's like, "You should run for school board." And I'm like, "You're insane." And he said, "No, we're raising a family now. Education's key, of course, of which I very much agree with. And government takes a really long time to work. And if you looked at my board, it was no one had young children. They may have been grandparents, but there was no one there with young children and understood the juggle that so many of us. I'm a working parent. I have like 5 jobs, I feel like, these days. Right. But all of those struggles that we deal with in the current generation, I think that it's so important that parents had a voice and a seat at the table. And so I ran to be that voice. I didn't know much. I really had 24 hours to make that decision. I remember calling my father, who's my mentor, lives in Sarasota. And I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about running for school board." And he's like, "You're going to open yourself up to a lot of scrutiny." And that was the understatement of the century. But this is important. When I was in college, I worked through college, and actually was very successful in my professional career and never finished college. I only have, I have like 2 or 3 classes to take to finish. But that was something that I was very insecure about and concerned about, and knew that obviously if you're running for school board, everything comes out. Sure. But I had to, so that was probably the one thing I was most scared of, if you will. And right. I share this because I want other people to step up to the plate. And there's always going to be something that you are concerned about the public knowing or what have you. It really is never as bad as you think it is. And so we overcame that, ripped it off like a Band-Aid. I actually think people understand that more than ever now that we look at, higher education and yep. what the value, we're questioning what the value is. And so
I was just going to go there.
Yeah. And so, but I think, there's all these things that we talk ourselves out of it, but, ignorance was bliss for me. And I in part of my training, and I'll talk to this about what we do at the Leadership Institute, but a lot of what I try to tell people is, listen, you will surprise yourself. And we always do as humans. We try to talk ourselves out of it. We're risk adverse, but ignorance was bliss. I stepped off that ledge, and I will tell you, win or lose, you learn so much about yourself and other people when you run for office. Obviously you go for the win, but the journey was amazing. I won with, I had to go to a runoff, but I won with less than 1%, but I still won. And since then I've been off to the races. So that was in 2014. A lot has happened since then, but that's how I got into it.
Man, that is absolutely fascinating. And I'm so glad you mentioned what you did about not quite finishing college with a couple of credits or classes or so left. And I think it's very important. I wasn't going to go there, but I'm so fascinated by that, because I think it is extremely important. Now, obviously, you're gifted. Obviously, you're smart. And so I know that people can have some type of insecurities and hangups, but I think you make a very good point. And I actually think that speaks to school choice, which is one of the things that you've been fighting for, along with Governor Ron DeSantis. I mean, you worked your way through college. Sadly, I don't think enough people do that, but you were already finding success. So you get to a point, if you're making enough money, you enjoy what you do. It's like, why am I here paying for this when I'm already making, so I think I think more people are starting to wake up. I'm not saying that college is a scam, but there are a lot of degrees in college or people pay for in college that are completely a scam. And I always believe that if you can go off and do something else, there's some people that need to be in college, some people that don't. But anyway, I'm glad that you shared that. Something else that's very fascinating about you, and I want people to know this, because I feel like Republicans get this issue conflated. With Governor Ron DeSantis, they feel like they've either got to love Trump or love DeSantis or hate one or hate the other. And it just excuse me, but it does.
You're fine. It does me too.
it drives me nuts. I mean, I think this is why we're so bad at politics. We conflate issues, regardless of whether or not Governor DeSantis may or may not be running for president. He's still doing a great job as governor. And I'm like, shouldn't we focus on the things that he's done as governor, and other states should imitate him? So one of the things that you helped to do, Bridget, is in 2018, you helped draft the Florida Parents' Bill of Rights. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so it's wild. Again, when I ran for school board, so many of the issues that I'm facing or dealing with from a policy standpoint now are not at all what I even thought would be on the forefront. But 2015, so I was elected in 2014. 2015 was the first aspect that we ever dealt with the transgender student issue. And it was back then, it was called transgender bathrooms, right? And there's a lot, it's very interesting when you look at the history and the language that's used intentionally,
right.
To try to, so I worked in risk consulting and I did risk analysis for a living. And so you look at policies and the unforeseen consequences of an insurance policy, for example, but that's my background. So it's very relevant when you talk about policymaking. And when the transgender bathroom, because they only want it to be thought of a bathrooms, not locker rooms, not overnight stays, not all the things that we're dealing with now. That was the first aspect we dealt with it. The district wanted to kind of sweep it on the rug. They kind of did in 2015. And then we found ourselves in 2017 with these gender diverse guidelines, not policies, guidelines. And this is so important because this playbook has happened across the country. And many people now see it for what it is, but it had provisions that said, so it circumvents the board. There's no adoption by the board. It's the superintendent put it out as guidelines to staff, but in it had it's up to the student alone to determine their name, gender, pronoun, and discern which facilities they use. And it goes farther to say that staff's prohibited from sharing any of this information with their parents when it's, and they said with elementary, it's a case-by-case basis. My mind, I was pregnant at the time with my second child, and my mind blew up. I just lost it. So I forced a vote. I told every media outlet locally because I wanted to make sure people understood what was happening at their local school district. I was in the minority. Sarasota is a very conservative town.
Right.
I was in the minority for 2 terms. We had a 3-2 and really we had a liberal majority for decades. And not until I got on the board, I think, did people realize it, because I was willing to lift the rocks and challenge them. You see across the country, there's so much groupthink. But anyway, I digress. So
that's a very important point that you're making. You got involved. You shook stuff up. People started paying attention. You started being even though you're a minority on the board, a vocal minority. And honestly, I'm just thinking of the year 2014. People are sitting here thinking, Bridget, that this trans stuff came out of just nowhere, but it didn't. They've been working up to this stuff. So it's a very important point that you made.
No, and that's why, and it's so interesting that we say back in 2015, I was like, it's a slippery slope. Well, we're at the bottom of that slope. Ben Shapiro mentioned that the other day, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, we're in the grave essentially, where it goes so far gone, and that's an important lesson when you talk about policymaking. But so I forced a vote at the local school board because they were trying to circumvent the board. So I made sure the public knew. I had every media outlet, and they tried to give me a hard time because they're saying you're making it a circus. And I said, that's my job, to make sure the public knows. If you guys want to support this, own it. I want to make sure the public knows what's happening, because if they don't support it, they should know that next time it comes to an election, that where we each stand. And so I forced a vote and then tried to amend it so that it required parental notification, not even consent, which I really should have gone as far as, but that was like my caveat, although on this really should have been consent. But either way, it failed 3-2. And to me, that just was like, this government body is telling the world that they believe they know better than parents on important issues.
Right.
And it shook me to the core. You see certain things that would underscore maybe that's the sentiment, but this was so blatant and so unbelievably arrogant and concerning. And fortunately, over the years, I had I had built really good relationships with the state legislature in Florida. I recommend any school board members across the state to do that in your respective state. And I'm sorry, across the country to do that in your respective state. But so I went and sought out a bill sponsor, and I was all over Facebook asking and talking about it. And there was the Parents' Bill of Rights had been brought forward previous years, but it didn't make much traction. Erin Garral was a state representative, now she's a senator, is a hero. Her and Kelly Stargell in the state of Florida have done more to save and protect families than any other legislator that I know of. But it took us 3 legislative sessions to pass. We created an entirely new state chapter of statute. And there we go. And that was kind of the first step. And we build upon that since then. So it's been a journey.
Cool. So cool. And for those of you that are tuning in, again, I'm speaking to Bridget Ziegler. She is the Vice President of School Board Leadership Programs at the Leadership Institute. By the way, go to the website. If you want to take back our schools from the woke mob, I'm serious, guys. I want you to go to takebackourschools.com. 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 You can make a donation to get involved. It's just $150 for Bridget to train one person to get onto a school board and win the seat. We'll get into that more in just a second here, but just very important work that we need to do as conservatives. It's fascinating to me, Bridget, that the left, they are so, pro-choice. They don't want babies, but then they want to brainwash your baby because they don't have children and they need their chaos to continue. And so they're brainwashing these kids in schools. And I think this is what gets me frustrated about people that love, and honestly, I'm a Trump supporter. I love DeSantis too. But it gets me frustrated because I'm like, we don't have to conflate the two. I see people bashing, and I want to get your take on this. I see people bashing, and conservatives and Republicans bashing Governor Ron DeSantis for taking on Disney. I know this is a little bit out of line, but I'm sitting here thinking like, wait a minute. He was going to sign the Parental Bill of Rights Act or whatever it's called. I'm sorry.
Parental Rights and Education. That's okay.
Thank you. Parental Rights and Education Act into law. And that's when Disney decided to go after him and essentially us as parents. So it was them coming after us, saying that they were going to, endorse left-wing candidates and all this kind of stuff, launch an attack against Governor DeSantis. And I'm like, do you guys remember that? And the whole fight was they wanted to mutilate our kids. And I hear conservatives talking about that wasn't a smart fight. We're for corporations. And I'm like, no, I'm not for corporations that want to mutilate children, you little sick perverts. I'm sorry. It frustrates me to no end. I'm like, can we recognize that? Yeah, there's probably going to be a big political battle between Trump and DeSantis, but at the same time, recognize that in the state of Florida and with these woke corporations, we have to fight them too. Like, it drives me insane that we constantly conflate the two issues as conservatives.
Well, it's a couple of things. So we're fortunate in Florida to have great leaders, 2 great leaders, Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. And I'm a supporter of both. My husband's certainly a supporter of both. He's the GOP chair of the state of Florida. But when I see the fighting and surrogates kind of attacking our governor, it's disheartening to me because you're just handing something over to the left. And we have a lot to fight when it comes to them. And we're talking about catastrophic, you're talking about castrating minor children and brainwashing them to the point of, we're talking about some sad, like demonic aspects of culture that have gotten so far gone. And when I say we're in a true battle of good and evil, I mean it. And sadly, our schools are the front lines. And oh, by the way, education is so paramount to the next generation being successful, being free thinkers, and this the future of our country. And it's being utilized and exploited to push these incredibly radical ideologies. And it's sad that many people have been captured by it and they don't see it. And so we have to attend as conservatives. That is where our energy needs to be. Let those 2 men kind of battle it out. Right. We'll be better for it. But as conservatives, us attacking Governor DeSantis, I will tell you, as a school board member, has been unbelievable in the state of Florida. That is why when I travel across the country, by the way, I talk to people on the ground everywhere, and they love DeSantis. They wish that was happening in their state in a myriad of ways. But I can tell you, I've been fighting, as noted, like these cultural issues, even though I didn't look for it. It came, and
Sure.
As an elected official, you got to do what you got to do when it approaches itself. And so there were sadly a lot of conservatives who wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, even though it was a logical aspect. They were afraid of being called a bigot and a homophobe or all these other things, of which we know we're not. And so he's taken it on with gusto. He knows where he stands. He is he's probably one of the most effective leaders I've ever seen in this fight. And that's why parents, and particularly moms, are big fans of DeSantis, because he has not stopped. And I think him being a parent of young children does play a pretty significant role. His wife's an amazing fighter.
Right.
That's what we need to focus on. The left is not stopping. They don't care about the infighting. They will just push as far as they can. And we need to be ready to push back and preserve the future of our country and protect our kids. It's awful what's happening.
Let me, again, for those of you tuning in, I'm speaking to Bridget Ziegler. She is the Vice President of School Board Leadership Programs at the Leadership Institute. Go to takebackourschools.com, takebackourschools.com. You can find out more about what she's doing. And again, we'll get into to that as well, a little more in depth in just a few minutes here. But you know what, Bridget, I want to get your take on this. I see what's happening. I want to tie this into the open borders, or this conversation into the open borders, because it's insane what we're already going through with the open borders. It's going to get even worse with the ending of Title 42 upon us on Thursday. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, the left wants to completely change the demographic of the United States of America. They want to flood the zone, even red states, make sure they put a lot of illegal immigrants into these states and hopefully capture their votes. I'm having an interview later with J. Christian Adams talking about these motor voter laws around the country. The left, I mean, they know what they're doing. I think the school boards, even more so now with the flood of illegal immigrants, is so important, because the left, when they put them in these schools, because we're not going to, I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to tell you the truth. So many conservatives and Republicans are weak. They're not going to kick a lot of these people out of the country. So I do want to make sure that a lot of people leave the country, but I also want to make sure that our school boards are teaching correct American, civics, history, so on, et cetera. So these kids coming in aren't brainwashed into left-wing radicalism.
Oh, there's so much to unpack there. So I will say it's interesting when it comes to the open borders. This is something I've been recently talking about, and I was encouraged to hear you talk about it, because it's not something I think conservatives are sharing, particularly as it impacts our schools. So there's a couple different things. One, from a strategic voting standpoint, I think we need to sound the alarm, because there are a lot of, depending on who our presidential nominee is, may not really attract certain suburban moms, for example. Well, until it starts to impact their schools, and open borders are impacting schools. No doubt it's a house of cards where you have an influx of students, children that don't speak English, that are not being funded for necessarily. We're not collecting any taxes or property taxes to fund the influx of people. So it makes the districts stretched even more thin, and that makes it harder to provide those programs. And so once you start to dip into that, the nicer schools, those families typically think, they're actually some that challenge school choice occasionally. They don't want school choice because they think it's going to be an impediment to their high-rated schools in suburban cities of America. But this is what's going to happen. We're seeing it happen across the country. You have an influx of thousands of children that do not speak English. We don't have teachers that are able and capable to teach these children. And that pulls down the entire classroom, entire school. And that's an impediment to our goal. So there's a lot of aspects there. But it's interesting also is that it's an untenable situation from the aspect of, the open border aspect is we don't know who's coming in. There's a security issue. But one of the bigger things that we talk about from education and the quality, like what are we teaching our children? And the left is so amazingly talented at just like just the rhetoric and the I don't know what the word is, but using words that trigger people. Like I said, people didn't want to say anything when they call you racist or bigot. And now, like the book banning, it's effective.
They set the narrative every time.
Yeah,
they set the narrative.
And they have, the media picks it up, right? So, but
Sure.
we have to counter that. But the other part is you have all of these people coming in, and there's a security standpoint, not only of open borders, but then we have an entire generation of children that are learning that this country is systemically racist, that were born, that they're undermining the integrity of our institutions, that, for centuries now, people have fought and given their lives for these principles. And this generation is not even, we're having a hard time recruiting when we're having, anyone to step up and serve our country because they don't think it's worth fighting for. And that is, in my mind, and I've said this recently, this is a national security issue.
Sure.
If we don't take it seriously about educating our children to be free thinkers and not be reliant upon our government and also have education rooted in Marxism, which is sadly happening, we are going nowhere fast. So all of these things are very serious, and it's making it harder to recruit teachers, but it's also making it it should be making it easier to recruit new school board members to help turn the tide of where we're going for this country.
I want to talk about a couple of more things, and then I want you to get very specific in what your organization does, how you're going about recruiting, what parents or people can do to get involved and to help. One thing Governor Ron DeSantis did, and I appreciate. I know a lot of people were scared of COVID at the beginning. It was, it was new. I thought from the very beginning, I was like, oh my God, come on, Trump, Russia, Ukraine. They're trying to get. I literally said that on air. And then I was like, oh my God, did I say that? Are people going to come after me? It was weird, but I was like, I don't care. I think they're going to use this. I was like, even if it's bad, the left will use it to destroy the country. It's just what they do. So I was a little disappointed in Trump that he shut down the economy, because I think that gave leftists the license that they needed in order to start rigging the elections, in my opinion. But having said that, I know Trump did it because he had a good heart. But also, Governor DeSantis did the same thing initially here in Florida, but he started reading. He got both of them, Trump and DeSantis, I think, kind of figured out what was going on relatively quickly. But Governor DeSantis announced that he was going to reopen the schools in the summer of 2020, when a lot of people were scared to do it. And he said enough of these mask mandates are not going to be tolerated. Speak to that, if you will. Also, speak to the cancer of CRT and DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and critical race theory that's literally being forced upon our children. Governor Ron DeSantis being called a racist because he wants to get queer theory, black queer theory, or whatever. I'm like, this is insane. It's insane what we're living through.
It really is, and I think, it's important, and I'll unpack a lot of that, because I was on the school board during that time, and those were some challenging policy decisions. Having a pit in your stomach, not necessarily knowing, and you're getting all this data from different people and not knowing what to trust. But overall, I'll say, just as I go through these, it's so important to know that it is all insane, and people are getting worn out, but they can't close their eyes to what's happening, because this is detrimental. Really, just everyone cares about their children, and it doesn't matter if you're left, right, yellow, pink, brown, it doesn't matter. Usually people do genuinely care. They need to discern what's actually happening and not listen to the false narratives that the left and the media is putting out. But when it came to COVID, those first couple of months in March, it was everyone. I think everyone knows that we went to spring break, and then it was the spring break that went on in perpetuity. And so at that time, it was trying to evaluate the data, and it was hard to figure out what data was accurate, because the data was actually very hard to get at one point.
Right.
Now, the states were able to, so under Governor Ron DeSantis' leadership, he was very clear about pumping out data at the state level so that local county governments and school districts were able to evaluate different things to see your trends. So my background's in analytics, so I was watching that very closely. And then just as a parent of young kids, particularly with the masks, when we had that conversation, we definitely needed to get the schools open. It was obvious, not only from an economic standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, and for our kids, you knew that we were able to see that young children were not being impacted from any level of severity at all, like at all. It was 0.01%, if not less than that, for any severe kind of illness. And that's across the entire state, if not the country, if you looked at those trends. But then the mask debate was so infuriating because I felt like I made such compelling arguments. And I was like, but I have a 3-year-old and I know that you're going to touch it, even if it was the best thing. Let's say it was effective. Any mitigation that it was able to provide would be undermined because they'd be touching it. And it doesn't take a genius or an epidemiologist. It just takes a parent that has a little kid that knows that would happen. And but despite that, we had we had public health officials coming in and talking to us at the school district board meetings. And I would say, I appreciate your expertise. We need to take that expertise and then couple it with our job and our mission of education and safety. And so we know that would be an impediment to their ability to read, to see phonics, facial expressions, cues, all these developmental skills that are critical to the foundation of reading and learning. And unfortunately, there were so many people that it's really mind blowing when you look at the psychological impact it had on not just our students, but the adults that were making these decisions that were blind to any level of common sense. So I'm grateful for DeSantis for saying, no, it doesn't matter what you call me. I'm going to look at this data and make, informed decision making. That's what I did. Unfortunately, my board at that time did not have a majority. We had to pull our daughter out. She was a rising first grader. There were a couple of reasons, partly what was happening with the curriculum and concerns about the left kind of taking over and pushing radical agendas, but her teacher was amazing. So she wasn't pushing it. It was more the special interest that find itself in this, the textbooks and stuff. But
a lot of teachers don't, I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of teachers don't have the power to fight against this stuff.
No, it takes board members. And truly, again, it takes administrators that understand what's happening and aren't cozying up to special interest groups when they go to these conferences at these school board association or superintendent's association, because that's what's happening. Publishers, this is $1 billion industry. Make no mistake, education is an industrial complex. And there are special interests that are pushing their way through that. And so going to the CRT, CRT, DEI, and SEL, I said, 4-letter words are now 3-letter words, and so. So for your listeners, that's critical race theory. I know that's been top of mind and a major conversation. Then you have diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then there's social emotional learning. And all of those have been captured and they're used as vehicles to promote and push a radical ideology. And ultimately, in the most simplistic terms, it's reducing the standards, lowering academic standards of saying, we don't need to evaluate our children on merit and those. We want to change that to evaluate them on their emotional and their social scores. And it's collecting data. And it's very much in line with ESG. I know I sound like I'm wearing a tin hat, but I can show you countless.
Well, we're wearing matching tin hats then because I'm.
Yeah, right. But look back at COVID. All the things that when you even mentioned that, like if you say something, you'll be called a conspiracy theorist. Yeah. How many things did you say that people would call us conspiracy theorists that ended up being true? Yeah. Well, and we have all the evidence in the world that they'll point to this. And again, a lot of teachers are not pushing this. We have a lot of really good teachers. There's a next generation that sadly have been indoctrinated. So we need to be very cautious of that, that next generation of teachers, the ones that you see on libs of TikTok. But there are a majority of our teachers across America are not captured. It's the aspect of this being promoted and pushed through the vendors, and school boards need to put a stop to it. So
that's good to know. Okay, now speaking on that, then, how do people get involved with the Leadership Institute? What exactly do you do? Because you train people. It says here to take back. You guys train people to take back one school board seat at a time. What does that look like, Bridget?
Right. So there are 138,000 school board members across this country. That's about 13,800 school boards across the country. So as noted before, I was in the minority of my board, but I was able to really shine a light on what was going on. And so the majority is wonderful because you can affect change, but don't be discouraged if you are able to get at least one or two. 2 seats is really the most important because you have someone to second a motion. And I think that what we're doing is we're helping train people across America. It's concerned citizens, and I like to have a group of 100 people in a room, and I'm going to talk through what's happening in education and how the decision makers, how the decisions are being made, where the levers are being, where they're being pulled, so that people understand how to effectively advocate for their children and know how to navigate the bureaucracy. And what we find through that is a lot of people are ready to step up and run for office. And so we run candidate training for school board, and we understand that it's a nonpartisan race most places across the country, so it makes it a little bit more unique. And we train them on how to be effective and how to raise money, how to message correctly, and how to get across the line and win. And then when they win, we don't leave them at the altar. We help them and arm them with the tools so that they can be effective when they're on that board. So those are the things that we do. And like you said, it's about $150 on average. If you donate, we can train each one individual, and we're hoping to train 10,000 people across the United States in the next 2 years.
You know what? That's such a small investment to literally save America, if you will. Investing in our children, investing in public schools. A lot of people will take their children out of school and can't afford to perhaps put them in some type of private school, colloquial school, or maybe even have the energy or time or make the time to homeschool. But a lot of parents aren't. A lot of parents are going to trust their public schools to educate their children. And we want to make sure that they're not getting brainwashed. They're getting the education they need. And frankly, the CRT, the DEI, the SEL, it's insulting because it literally tells Black children or minority children, you're too dumb to succeed based upon merit. So we got to do something special for you, as if you're all special ed students because of your ethnicity, or if it's LGBTQ, whatever it may be. People should be completely insulted by this nonsense. But frankly, a lot of people love being victims for whatever reason. But Go ahead.
No, that's exactly what's happening. And the standards are being lowered. And to your point is, children, human beings rise to the occasion when you elevate those standards, both on conduct and academics. And we're seeing both being lowered. And it's really just setting our children up. We're setting our children up for failure. And I believe that whether your children go to public schools, whether you have children in schools, or whether they go to private schools, all of us need to be involved in this fight, because it impacts the entire generation, our children's entire generation. And it 1000% impacts the direction of this country. And so Leadership Institute is being, we've trained thousands already. We need everyone to step up. It doesn't matter how woke and left your community is. There are people rising up across the country in the most liberal counties and school districts, and we're there to help. And so if you go to saveourschools.com, or you can also follow me on Twitter at Bridget A. Ziegler, and sign up for our trainings also at leadershipinstitute.org. Okay,
now I've been saying takebackourschools.com. Do you prefer?
What did I say?
Saveourschools.com.
No, you're right. Take back our schools. Right. I was wrong.
Okay, so let's say takebackourschools.com. 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 And a very important thing that you said, I think, is extremely crucial. A lot of people may want to get into this fight and become a school board member, but you don't know how. You don't know how to message. Messaging is huge. It is huge. I know a lot of conservatives don't like to use this lingo. We like to be, we're high and mighty and right. And listen, we are fighting against commies in the United States of America that want to take down this country. And it's important that we learn some of the tactics and learning effective rhetoric and messaging and narrative. All of this stuff is crucial for us to learn to take back our country using, positive language, uplifting language, and putting the left and these little commies on defense that are trying to destroy the United States of America. So I got to tell you, Bridget, I am so fascinated by you. I didn't know that your husband was a GOP chair. You got to connect us here.
Happy to.
Yeah. So that's really cool, man. You guys are a powerhouse couple. Then I absolutely love that. And then I'm going to tell Gabe to make sure that your picture is much bigger than mine, because I think people will want to look at you rather than look at me. So you're fascinating. You're impressive, guys. Please. Takebackourschools.com. Takebackourschools.com. Any closing words here, Bridget?
Well, what you mentioned, it was so critical. It's not enough to be right. We have to know how to be effective and win. So Morton Blackwell, the founder of Leadership Institute, says we owe it to our philosophy to learn and study how to win. That's what we do at Leadership Institute. We help you message, we help you learn how to get across the line, and we help you how to govern so that we can take back our country, take back our schools, and really provide our next generation with the same opportunities or more that we had. So I really appreciate the opportunity, Carl. And I'm happy to talk about this anytime. We only scratch the surface, but whatever I can do to help motivate people to get out and fight, this is the battleground.
And what we'll have to do, Bridget, is when there's issues concerning this, we'll just have to bring you back on and go even deeper. This is going to be an ongoing battle. Taking back our schools is going to be extremely important. We're learning how important school boards are in the fight. So, hey, kids, it's absolutely fine. I don't mind it all. I don't think people out there in the listening audience, mind it at all.
No, that makes us real. We're real human beings.
Exactly right. But guys, we've got to take back our schools. We've got to be able to protect our children. We got to educate our children if we want to save America, and not on CRT, DEI, and SEL and child mutilation, but reading, writing, arithmetic, science, arts, music. We've got to get back to the things that make people exceptional and individuals instead of trying to make them clones for the left. So they are doing that at takebackourschools.com. Please join the fight. Just $150, or if you want to donate more, obviously you can. But $150 will be dedicated to taking back one seat and training up a potential school board member. So please do it. Takebackourschools.com, takebackourschools.com, takebackourschools.com. And if you can afford more, please give more. Bridget, there's another issue that I forgot to talk about that I want to make sure that we do talk about. And that's this narrative that Governor Ron DeSantis is banning books for learning. Can you speak to that issue?
Yeah, so this is a big deal. And again, using the rhetoric, the left is very good at using words that will trigger people and shut down the conversation. But as conservatives, as concerned parents with any level of common sense, we all can agree that we do not want explicit sexual content or pornographic material in any K-12 school. Listen, if you're a parent and you are okay with your child reading those books, then fine. We're not the federal government. We're not banning them, but we are, as governing officials, making sure that there are guardrails in place. And that's what Governor DeSantis put in place legislation, because in school boards, we kept finding horrific material. I have the books here, but I always highly recommend to people go buy them, and you'll understand what we're talking about, and read them to people and show them to people, because that's the only way that we're going to overcome this battle of the book banning battle. But what's wild is that every time these books would surface at the school district level, no one would ever be able to tell where they came from. Never, not one. No one could ever identify who brought them in. Well, that's interesting. So then, since they couldn't find that, then the state legislature elevated a vetting process, because if you can't identify where it's coming from, then we're going to have to elevate the scrutiny so that there is accountability and there's systems in place to protect our children. The wild part is that then the left used our schools as social activism centers, as political activism centers, clearing off bookshelves and taking pictures, saying that the governor's book banning. So he held a press conference. This is a kicker. He held a press conference and then had visuals of these books that were found in over 60%, I think it was more than that, 70% of our school districts.
They're showing in K. This is just so people understand, from K through 12.
And many were in elementary, and a lot were in K-8s, right? So they're saying, it's really geared towards middle school, still inappropriate, but it's accessible even to kids as low as 5. And so what they were doing is, so they showed pictures.
Unbelievable.
And the news media, the networks had to cut it because they would have had a violation of the FEC. So but hey, by the way, it's okay to have in our schools, or when they're read at school board meetings, they're being shut. Parents are being smart and reading them, and they're getting shut down because it violates the decorum rules in a school board chambers. But it's okay for our young children to read them. We have to get our priorities straight. And the book banning discussion is not, it's being used on purpose to shut us down, but we're talking about explicit sexual acts with very detailed descriptions about things that include pedophilia, no joke, bestiality, that include incest.
For children.
For play rape. I mean, I'm not kidding. So, and the books are everything from Choke, which is right here. That was found in our school district. You have this.
Wow.
This book is gay. Buy this. I don't want to get them. I don't want to give them money. But if you're out there and you're an activist, buy these and read them, and then show them to people. And this one is another one that is about as graphic as it gets, and it's unbelievable. They're illustrations. No, honey, you can't look at those. My daughter's here, and I'm like, no, she can't see them. But they're illustrations, and if they were actual visuals, if they were pictures, it would be a felony because it would be considered child pornography. But these are allowed in our schools. So yeah, I have no problem banning them from our school district, but they're still available on Amazon. And if that's so be it. But as an elected official, I will hold the line all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite frankly, I think it's sick that adults would be sharing books like this with our children. They are pedophiles. That is still evil and sickening, and it's amazing to me. So anyway, I probably have to have my my wife get those books and just take a look at them. She's a counselor and she can rummage through them. I'd love to get her take on it. So anyway, again, my guest is Bridget Ziegler. She's been absolutely amazing. Go to takebackourschools.com, takebackourschools.com, takebackourschools.com. Again, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Please rate, review, like, and share this podcast with as many people as possible. We need people on the school board. If you're not going to run, please donate. We have to get in this fight. This is one of the ways in which we can take our country back from these left-wing radicals that are trying to take it over and fundamentally transform it. TakeBackOurSchools.com. Bridget Ziegler, you can find her on Twitter. Did you say Bridget A. Ziegler?
Yeah, Bridget A. Ziegler.
Okay, Bridget A. Ziegler, okay, on Twitter. So please check her out. Please follow her. Please donate. TakeBackOurSchools.com. We can take back America one school board seat at a time with some good training, all right, with messaging, and finally someone that can teach us how to win. I love that. Absolutely love that. I'm getting excited. Good Lord.
That's right. We need to. We need to. I mean, we need to, and we should be. So we can do it.
I love it. I love it. I love the thought of actually winning the country back. So absolutely amazing. All right, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, do not grow weary doing good, and God bless you.